How many remember Billionaire Boys Club? The clothing line, not the gang, because while doing research for this, I actually found out that there was a gang by the same name. But anyway, Billionaire Boys Club, the clothing line, was a brand created in collaboration between rapper and producer Pharrell Williams and Nigo of A Bathing Ape fame. BBC would serve as one of the grandfathers of the whole streetwear as high fashion trend that would take over a decade or so later. In the early 2000s, Billionaire Boys Club was huge. Everyone wanted the pieces, and it made a decent profit for the brand's creators. But like many of the brands from that era, BBC is not quite the behemoth that it once was. Pause. But anyway, I'm Nate the Great from TakeFlight214.com. And in today's video, we'll discuss the rise and fall of Billionaire Boys Club. But before we get started, don't forget to hit the like button. It's a small act for you, but it really helps us out a lot in continuing to get the message out there. And if you want to be updated whenever we drop more rise and fall of streetwear brand videos, then hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to be reminded whenever we drop new entries to the series. But with that being said, let's jump right in. It all started back in 2002 when Pharrell made his first trip to the land of the rising sun. And that's Japan, for those that don't know. Pharrell found himself inspired by the showroom of Nigo, who at the time already had Bape up and going pretty strong. Pharrell admired Nigo's ability to transform his world into the interpretation of what life should be like for him. When Pharrell saw what Nigo was doing, he realized that they were both on the same page and thought that Nigo might be interested in helping him out on his brand. It was at this moment in Japan that BBC was born. Pharrell wanted to make sure that people didn't misread the brand name Billionaire Boys Club. Basically, the brand was to inspire people to get into something that they felt was important in their life, but it had nothing to do with money. I think it's important to note now that in the 90s, rap music blew up in Japan. People there ate it up, and there was a huge subculture that sprang up around it. Long story short, because this really could be a video all into itself, but a streetwear industry would also emerge shortly after too. The irony of this is, Japanese streetwear would hit big in the States. People on this side of the pond loved it and couldn't get enough. So manufacturing the Billionaire Boys Club clothing in Japan would be an integral part of the brand's image. The flip side of this is that it costs more to produce, and they would have to pass on the extra expenses to the customer in the way of higher retail price tags. But more on that later. Pharrell had a pretty clear vision of what he wanted his brand to be. He talked to a bunch of graphic designers about creating a logo for him. The winning design would wind up coming from Toby Feltwell, who presented Pharrell with the now iconic Spaceman logo one night while Pharrell was out at the club. And with an eye-catching logo now in hand, they were ready to get started. They produced the first season, which consisted of mainly a small amount of logo t-shirts and polos. But the world would officially be introduced to Billionaire Boys Club when a few pieces appeared in a fronting video, which featured Jay-Z. Jay-Z would ironically be heavily involved again later, but we'll get to that. Pharrell & Co. would then set up an e-commerce site, and as soon as it went live, they began to sell thousands of units. The promotion that they got from the fronting video was extremely key, considering this was the days before social media really took off. But that's not to say everything was all good for BBC from jump. Reebok was originally set to release the clothing line alongside the Icecream sneakers. Originally, Icecream was supposed to be the sneakers and Billionaire Boys Club was supposed to be the apparel. This was different for Reebok because the apparel was manufactured in Japan. They weren't very comfortable with the setup and decided to pull out. Although the sneakers would be good, the clothing line was postponed and all projects came to an end by late 2004, early 2005. It wouldn't be until the very end of 2005 when the brand was finally launched as a partner company to A Bathing Ape. But once they ironed out all the kinks, having a superstar producer like Pharrell involved definitely gave Billionaire Boys Club a leg up over all of the other streetwear brands of the time. Andre Leon Talley was spotted in the Billionaire Boys Club during the Fashion Week, while Pharrell's friend Anna Wintour would also lend huge credibility. Choreographer, who professed his secret love for hip-hop, or maybe it wasn't so secret, considering he would show up in an edition of Harper's Bazaar wearing a BBC jacket. It was around this time that BBC began to popularize the all-over print look that everybody loved so much back in the day. I mean, really, you remember those? The all-over print jackets and hoodies and sweatshirts and everything. I mean, I had some too, and I thought they were dope back in the day. They really were. I mean, I can't even be mad at it. They had weird cartoon images of things like cigarettes and beepers plastered all over the entire top. But hey, it worked. Ironically, though, this Uber promotion would work against them in some ways as well, though. Mind you, this was around the time that many of the other brands that we covered in the Rise and Fall of a Streetwear brand series were starting to go strong as well. Brands like Crooks & Castle and Diamond Supply. And if you watched any of our other episodes, then you know that these brands got it out the mud. They certainly didn't have any huge celebrity help to get started. They were all small startup companies who grinded to get their pieces in the small boutiques and rose to fame through a cult following. Many of the people who were fans of these brands didn't quite respect what seemed to be like an easy road that Pharrell took by being famous already and then going the extra route by tapping in for help from his also famous celebrity friends. So when Pharrell decided to launch the Icecream skate team and leaned hard into skateboarding, they had to really work to gain respect in the community. Skateboarding is a very close-knit bunch of guys and young ladies, and they don't really like letting outsiders in. And although Pharrell previously displayed his affinity for skateboarding, his moniker was Skateboard P, by the way, he had to get some really legit guys if he wanted the team to work. Originally, he would recruit some of the biggest names in the game: Terry Kennedy, Jacob Wilder, Kevin Booker, Kato Williams, guys that had respect in the world of skating. However, to some, it kind of seemed like Pharrell just went out and paid a few mercs. But in hindsight, it kind of looks like he was really genuine about the idea. Terry Kennedy, more than anybody else, brought a lot of credibility to Icecream skate team. He helped them to be accepted in the community beyond just a celebrity trying to buy his way into the culture. BBC worked with certain stores that would make sense for their price point, and there were really only a handful of stores in the US that could sell the clothing and be successful. Billionaire Boys Club was exclusive, but it wasn't meant to be that way from the beginning. Pharrell always wanted to be inclusive with his fans, but the price was starting to get prohibitive. The way they were doing things was not a long-term success plan. They were making stuff very expensively in Japan and in very small quantities and selling very few items. The clothing was really popular and in demand, but they weren't selling a lot of pieces. And there's really only so long you can go on like this without running into serious problems. There was really no price difference between Icecream and Billionaire Boys Club. Icecream was a little more colorful and aimed at a younger audience, while Billionaire Boys Club was a bit less colorful, but if you walked into the store and looked at them both, there was really no difference in the price points. But they always wanted to differentiate between the two brands, so they began to have Icecream manufactured in China so as to lower the overall overhead prices. During the financial crisis of 2010, everyone was hurting, and BBC knew that if they wanted to survive, they would have to make some changes fast. Nigo was really focused on his Bathe and Ape business, and they felt that BBC was not growing. So they sat down with Nigo, and all parties agreed that they would have to seek out a new partnership if they wanted to get themselves through this tough time. In would come Jay-Z. See, remember I told you we'd get to that. Jay-Z had been a supporter of the brand since the early days, and along with Iconic's brand group, he would purchase a 50% stake in the BBC Icecream Company. With the new deal, BBC and Icecream moved production from Japan to Canada, Mexico, Korea, and China, which would help them bring down the overall price points. This would cause concern for a core fan base at BBC though. Some were excited because it was going to be more available, and some people thought that Jay-Z was going to turn Billionaire Boys Club into another version of Rocawear. Despite the reservations, in May of 2012, Jay-Z's rock apparel group, which markets Rocawear under licenses from Iconics, signed a partnership agreement with Billionaire Boys Club Icecream. The new partnership would see BBC begin to do a lot more collabs, and it seemed to achieve what Pharrell originally wanted, which was to expand the brand at a cheaper price point. This partnership wouldn't last too long though. Only 2 years after doing the deal, Pharrell would purchase the 50% stake back and regain majority control over BBC. Over the years, BBC has lost a lot of the luster that it once had. However, the contribution that they made to the game can't be overlooked. Bape was one of the first Japanese brands to really make a splash in America, and by hooking up with Nigo, BBC was able to ride that wave along with them. BBC, due to the fashion connections of Pharrell, were able to get a seat at the table of some of the longtime legacy fashion houses and gain respect. This not only helped BBC, but it would synergistically give a boost to the genre as a whole. It introduced the West to the Japanese take on streetwear. The reality is the ethos behind the Japan side of street style, brands like Neighborhood, A Bathed Ape, Undercover, Hysteric Glamour, their whole thing was, if Gucci can put their name on a t-shirt and charge $200 for it, then why can't I do it? Their mindset came from a more couture fashion, whereas in America, the streetwear brands were more about DIY skate aesthetic. But BBC showed us that consumers were willing to pay high fashion prices for streetwear apparel. Billionaire Boys Club got hate from some and love from others, but overall, it was revolutionary in its own way. Billionaire Boys Club Icecream is not died completely though. In fact, they'll be releasing the BBC by Adidas NMD later on this year. So what do you think? Were you a fan of BBC Icecream? What you think about the new NMD collab, and would you wear the brand today? Hit us up in the comments section and let us know what you think. Also, if you like the video, then don't forget to hit the like button. It helps us out a lot in getting the reach out there and growing more as a channel. We do new episodes on the rise and fall of streetwear brand series every week. And if you like to be notified each time we drop a new edition, then hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to be reminded each time we update every week. So with that being said, I'm Nate the Great from TakeFlight214.com signing out. Until next time, peace.